American Outlaws, hello, Donald Wine here, and I hope that through the craziness that has carried over from 2020 to 2021, that you're all doing well out there. Listen, we have a special interview today, and by now you know that on January 1st, we released our 2021 AO member shirt, easily the boldest shirt we've ever produced. We the change. There's a lot behind those words, and as we're in the beginning stages of the busiest year in our organization, it's also the most important year for us. And those words will be a central theme of all we hope to bring you in 2021. So we're going to be discussing that today. But to do that, we want people to get inside the mind of the person who came up with this concept. And hopefully that will lead into a discussion about what we the change means and how we can be successful at bringing the change to American soccer that we seek in this important year. So I bring in my good homie, Aaron DOLORES. Aaron DOLORES is the founder of Black Arrow FC, which is a platform and lifestyle brand that focuses on the cross section between soccer and Black culture. And as we kick off Black History Month, I thought it'd be terrific to have Aaron on to discuss Black Arrow, the concept for our new member shirt, and the ideals and principles that accompany it. So Aaron, my man, we've been talking about this for a while. I'm glad to finally get to have the chance to have this conversation with you today.
For sure. Well, thank you for having me, and it's an honor and a pleasure to work with the American Outlaws. Yeah, I'm excited, and you and I have known each other for a while, but we hadn't really had the opportunity to work together formally. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah, same here. And like you said, we've known each other for years, probably going back to 2014 or 2015. But I want to start off with just Black Arrow. Like, tell us about it. Tell us the mission behind the brand.
Yeah. So wow, we launched. I would say it's almost been 3 years now, and really, I would say one of the most important things for our brand is the fact that I myself wasn't um, really into soccer until doing some traveling internationally, and I fell in love with the sport, and but just very amateur as far as like understanding this global world of soccer. Um, and although I did play when I was younger and all the way through high school, it was where I grew up. It was soccer is very much considered a recreational sport. You know what I mean? And so after just the game piquing my interest and starting to see some of the culture that the game represented, I just logically asked the question, what is the role of Black people in in this massive game, and how and where are stories being told, and just through doing some research, I really found out that here you have the biggest game in the world, and Black people didn't really have an opportunity or a platform to tell our own stories and have the content created in a way that we like to see things sometimes. So you know I really just stopped everything that I was doing, and I was just so motivated at really what the potential of what we could build, and a big part of that was being able to connect in with the different stakeholders of soccer, whether that's groups like the American Outlaws, whether that's players, whether that's fans, whether that's clubs, and I thought it was important for the industry to have one entity that kind of in one way or another represented the Black voice, as a way to um, you know also bring the game to the Black community, right? Because if we want more Black folks to play the sport and watch the sport, then it has to be kind of positioned in a way that makes sense for Black people, or how Black people like to consume content. So um, yeah, that's what we do, is everything from events to documentary content to um, telling stories, and really just trying to do our part in growing the game here in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the name itself, Black Arrow, you're thinking, okay, Black Arrow, that makes sense. But there's a story behind that name even too. Tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. So That comes from the father of Gil Scott Heron. And for those who don't know who Gil Scott Heron is, he's the kind of the godfather of hip hop, the precursor. He was one of the first, kind of poets to put, his rhymes over like instrumentals. And he's also the poet that made the Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And so, come to find out that his father was actually a professional soccer player. His father had come from Jamaica, and this is in the late 50s. His father had come from Jamaica, given birth to Gil Scott Heron, and eventually got scouted by the Celtic, and became the first Black player to play for the Celtic. And he actually wasn't the first Black player to play in Scotland, come to find out, but he was the first player to play for Celtic. And at the time, the fans, because he was fast and he was Black, had nicknamed him Black Arrow.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that actually what is more important than just kind of like a cool story, because for me, what it represented was, not knowing much about soccer. Every time I looked into something, every time I went down a rabbit hole, every time I researched, I would always find these amazing kind of connections to Black history. And so it really motivated me to do some of the projects that we've done, and to like really go after this thing, because I'm like, wow, there's all these untold stories out there that really connected with Black folks. Yeah.
Yeah, and that cross section is just even in the name apparent. Gil Scott Heron, I'm from Detroit, one of Detroit's finest,
There
and
you
just
go.
this section of blending music and that kind of culture with that part of the culture with the soccer, and having just a link that no one would really think about. I mean, even that story I told last year, because it was inspired by that just clip that you just mentioned right there, that he was linked to the first player to ever play for a Black player to ever play for Celtic. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
I
And
noticed.
one amazing thing is his granddaughter reached out to me maybe a year and a half after we started the brand, and she said just like, "This is amazing what you've done," and my grandfather would be proud. And I actually last year, her and her family, they had never been to a game, and they didn't have a connection with the team. And so, through this, also two things that had happened since launching this brand is I was able to connect with the Celtic prior to even meeting her. And when she said that they wanted to go to a game, I was able to connect her with the club, and they gave her the red carpet treatment and invited her out to a game and honored her at halftime. So that was a big moment for me to kind of just like, kind of confirm that, not only is this platform important, but there's this opportunity to make these connections with our history.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a great story. And, they talk about that. I mean, that was international news. That wasn't just, in
For
the
sure.
segment of the internet that people would have to search to find. That was on front pages, which is an incredible achievement for Black Arrow. Listen, you've done quite a bit of partnerships in your short history. I noticed you're wearing a reggae shirt from Wolves. That's one of them, the most recent one. But AS Roma, LA Galaxy, Black Players for Change, Black Players Alliance, and other ones. Like, how do you find these strategic partnerships? What's the strategy behind it, and what draws you to work with some of these teams?
For sure. Um, well, real quick, this isn't a wool shirt, but I think it's funny that you pointed that out. This is just a whole reggae shirt that I
I mean,
that
it
I
looks
got
like
with
one.
Will.
I can see the
Yeah,
wolf in the front.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so I would say that like one of the most important things when starting this is, you know, figuring out how we're going to connect in with the stakeholders of the industry, right? Because inevitably, the teams and the leagues and the players and all of these things are the ones that control the industry and run the industry and make the money and things like that. So, um, we started actually from the business side. The way that Black Arrow works is, kind of we create, co-branded projects with, teams, leagues, brands, whoever wants to work with us, and tell Black stories to reach Black people to, make their brand look cool. So that's really what is behind a lot of that. But, for the most part, everyone that we work with is just a matter of like, you know teams reaching out to us and saying like, hey, we love what you're doing, we've seen your content, we've checked you out, and like, we'd love to work with you, and that's it wasn't always like that. I would say over the last year now, it's really just, much more about who reaches out to us, because, um, I think it means a lot, because it kind of just it makes the relationship natural, and, um, we don't have to try to like, this game is global and it's huge, and don't necessarily have to beat down people's doors to want to tell Black stories, and often, this would make me kind of a fan of a team, because someone reaches out and says, hey, our club wants to align our brand with what you guys are doing, and we want to tell Black stories. And so, yeah, that's where most of that has come from.
Well, it's good that you're seeing that, and it's not necessarily you're trying to seek out and say, please tell Black stories. They're having a desire to want to come to you. I think that speaks to just how far in a short period of time this, the cross section between Black culture and soccer has just kind of evolved. Where do you see? Have you seen that? And also, just where do you hope it will go in the next 5 to 10 years? What's that trajectory for in your mind?
Yeah, so I would say that that demand is a combination of, what we've done and what we've built as a brand, right? And then it's, on the other hand, it's just the swag and the influence that Black people have in general, right? And so, I think that everybody wants to expand, reach new audiences, reach new territories, and so, I think that's often what's behind, some of the outreach. But, what we are expanding into is, seeing Black Arrow as, kind of an over like an umbrella organization, where under it we have these individual verticals that we are, kind of bringing this concept of Black soccer into, right? So that could be, merchandise, that's, films. We're right now working on a documentary with AS Roma, and another documentary that we filmed in Kenya. Um, that could be gaming. And so, I look at, um, you know, we want this combination of Black and soccer to be everywhere within, everywhere soccer can possibly be, right? And I think it's a better time than ever, for that to be the case, because, soccer clubs they all have esports teams, right? They're, films on Netflix, and so
Hmm.
there's any amount of, kind of like applications of our brand, right? Um, and so, yeah, we just want to continue to grow and use our platform as well to, give content creators, that want to tell Black stories, to be able to do that under, Black Arrow. So, yeah, does that answer your question? Or were you thinking more as, where does, Black Arrow go, or where do Black people in soccer go?
No, I think the question answers itself, and the way you described it is great, because I think that Black Arrow is going to be a part of that landscape. So seeing it through that lens is a great thing as well. Just to kind of piggyback off of that, from a global perspective, what are you hoping to see in the next, let's say 5 years? What are you expecting to see as this cross section becomes more intertwined and is more of a section than a cross section?
Yeah, when I started this and when I looked at the landscape of soccer, my thing is, I wanted to have an offering to the industry, and not just do a bunch of like cool kid stuff. And so what I felt was really important was, there was a lot of conversations and still are about, are Black people into soccer? Are they playing soccer? Is there access to the sport and all of these things? And so I wanted to take the onus or even the pressure for our brand to say, let's get more Black people in the stands, frankly.
Hmm.
Um, because as fans and as consumers of the sport, so many other things come along with that, right? If you're a fan, you're going to play more. If you're a fan, you're going to spend more. If you're a fan, you're going to help grow the game and advocate the game more. So um, I wanted to kind of like look at this lens and this landscape and really focus on like one, creating a space for the current Black soccer fans. Because what we found is that there was already a lot of like Black soccer fans. They just didn't really have, a magnet or something to connect in with and to connect with each other. And then, take on the role and responsibility of creating new fans. And what that means is sometimes we have to explain to people what offsides is. Sometimes we have to not be snobby if someone doesn't know who
Right.
Ronaldo is or whatever. And so you know finding this like balance between kind of growing the game and talking about the game, but also building a bridge for those people that don't quite understand it, and making it more accessible in that way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And definitely something that I think can blossom, especially over the next few years. I do want to turn to the member shirt, because
For sure.
when we first had our meeting about designing the 2021 member shirt, a lot of people don't know this, but you had a connection already with AO. You hadn't worked with us before, but the bar that I think you're a partner with, the athletic club, is the
Yeah,
AO Oakland bar.
for sure. Yeah. So I'm part owner of a new sports bar here in Oakland, and um, it within that, I really took the lead, and this was at the same time I was launching Black Arrow, like kind of overseeing and like creating the soccer programming there, which is a lot more work than you would think because you know everybody wants to come and watch the NFL, everybody wants to come and watch the NBA,
Hmm.
and so you really got to carve out real estate within the bar to be able to make sure soccer folks have games to watch. The games that they want to watch are on. You got the right packages. You're open at 7 in the morning, and then you have to justify that across the business. So, um, yeah, that was a really cool kind of like program for me to run because Oakland is a diverse place. And so, you got to see, all right, here's the Barcelona fans, here's the Chelsea fans, the Man U fans, the Arsenal fans are the craziest. And, really realizing that like the, the fans are all like very different groups of people. One of the groups that, is the American Outlaws. So, I did a lot to make sure that when the U.S. national team games were on, that the Outlaws always had their space in the bar. They had the sound on. You know what I mean? We had the scarves up and the posters up and the
Hmm.
giveaways and all of those type of things. So yeah, that's actually my first kind of um, you know how I first found out American Outlaws. You know, after meeting you. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so you've had some experience, but this is a different kind of venture. So what sold you? I mean, we wanted to work with you, but what sold you on wanting to be a part of this member shirt design process and collaborate with us?
Um, you, you to a certain degree, you reaching out, and like I said, um, I love when people want to work with us. I love when people want to tell Black stories, and so there's always a different way and application to do that. Um, you know, I know with it being a national organization that It's huge and there's members all over the place. And so, I really kind of thought it would be a cool opportunity for, Black Arrow. I'm very much into like solving things and telling stories like through leadership. And so I thought it was a good opportunity for us to set the tone and send a message to American soccer and and have it be kind of a way that we can insert our influence and our message and things that we wanted to get across to people. So yeah, super excited. I would be wearing it today, but it's too cold, so I had to
Well, see,
put something on.
I'm from Michigan, so it's like 30 degrees out here in DC, and cold is nothing to me.
Okay.
That's warm. So I was able to wear it. I completely get. I have my windows open. I'm stupid.
Okay.
So, um, but I do want to talk about this theme. We had a change. I'll hold it up a little bit for people who are watching at home.
Mhm.
When we saw it, it was a powerful theme, and I do want to quote when we released the shirt, you mentioned that you wanted to use this opportunity to highlight the fact that players can't and shouldn't carry this torch alone. This torch being the Be the Change campaign that the men started with their jackets, and also the women following with the Black Lives Matter jackets a week later.
Mhm.
That inspiration, how did you arrive at that concept? Because that is, even in when you think about it, you're like, okay, this is a great concept, but you were way here and had to get to a point where that was the we to change. How did that spark in your brain?
Yeah, so I would say there's two major things. One was, I've really been kind of connected to just the reality that the problems that we're trying to solve in society cannot, just happen through celebrity culture. It can't happen just through players. It can't just happen through LeBron. And so I think that we've kind of gotten to this point where we have this expectation almost of these, and it happened pretty quickly. If like for Mike in Michael Jordan's era, it was like the expectation was you say you don't need to say anything, right? And then
Hmm.
guys started speaking out a little bit more and more and more and more, and now in the blink of an eye, it's turned into like you know they they're getting after cats if they don't speak out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Which is great, but also um, I coming from outside of soccer and being from Oakland, California, where the Black Panthers are from, and a big part of the civil rights movement. I never really like in Oakland, say, hey, we got a problem. Let's go get soccer. Let's go talk to the soccer players. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that. It's not how it's like these things happen in the streets and they happen there. So um, that's just part of my perspective. And so in watching when the players came out, and I think for the U.S. national team specifically, they were in an interesting position because the social movement had already been going for a few months, and things had kind of like evened out a little bit, and so like they kind of had to make their statement after a lot of conversations had gone on, a lot of back and forth, and things had kind of you know um, already churned like that. So when they came out with the Be the Change, frankly, I was thinking like for them, it's a little bit of a statement that's saying like we all need to be this change, right? Like we're
Right.
not. It didn't say I'm only going to change. It's basically saying we all need to be this change that um, that we want. And so, I felt like I wanted to figure out an opportunity for the American Outlaws to be able to within the concept of a t-shirt and design to capture that message and reflect it back to the players, and literally say, as you guys are asking us to be the change, like we're understanding that we're going to be the change, um, and to in a certain degree promote the reality that if we want to change things and we need to change things, you know, it can't just be onto the players, that the people in the stands have to take on that responsibility as well, um, and so yeah, and it was also just driven by the fact that, one of the things you and I talked about was like, you have the women are over here meeting, the men are over here meeting, the
Hmm.
black players of the MLS over here meeting, the black players of the USL meeting. I'm talking to all of them. And so I'm thinking, okay, like how can we unify our message and like, in our communication, right? Um, because I think we are all hoping for the same thing, and so let's try to create that connection. Maybe it's just through starting with a T-shirt, but hopefully that connection creates this you know this unity between the players and the fans, right? At the end of the day, what you want is you want players to come out and say, we want change, here's what we want you guys to do, and then fans going to show up and doing that, right?
Hmm.
Giving back, donating, volunteering, helping people out. And that's like what we're trying to achieve, rather than just, okay, a player spoke out, a player did something great, we're happy that he did it, now let's just go on with our life.
Right.
So yeah, I saw things trending in that direction, and I was like, let me, maybe this is a cool opportunity to change that a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll come back to the actual central themes and some of the ideals behind it in a second. I do want to touch quickly on George Baker, who is the artist who you approached about rendering this and turning this template and design into a reality. What was
Yeah,
it about him? How did you link with him, and what was it about him that led you to choose him as the artist to kind of create this vision? Because his vision was great, and it's an interesting concept. Some people say it's kind of a school rock or a schoolhouse rock type of theme, but I kind of like that because schoolhouse rock had messages in it, and you
yeah,
always left learning something. And with this shirt, hopefully people look at it and serves kind of as a reminder or a learning experience. So how did you link with him?
yeah. So you know, always just have an eye out for, you know, one of the most important things that we do and can do with Black Arrow is like use these creative opportunities to bring in other, creatives that are outside of soccer, to work in it, both to, to get them interested in it, and to give them a platform to, get across their art. So actually, one of our partners in Atlanta was a big fan of him, and he does a lot of work around Atlanta and a lot of big illustrations. And you know, for me, I have a tough time with t-shirts, honestly, because I feel like it's hard. It's like you want to say a lot, but how do you get across a lot without just writing it on there?
Hmm.
So um, working with an illustrator that could, create a scene, you know what I mean, and not just something that was symbolic, you know what I mean. Um, and so yeah, we kind of just like worked together on that. And with when I'm looking at the American Outlaws, thinking about it, with it being a supporters group, I thought it would be um, relevant and important to um, show basically what supporters groups look like, which is,
Right.
big fans with signs and things like that. So at the same time, I figured it was an on point representation of, functionally what supporters groups do. And then to have both the players and the supporters section kind of on one image, kind of represented like what the message that I wanted to get across. So yeah, um, and and George, what I love, one of the things is like with Black Arrow is that like when we reach out to people and we say, yo, here's this like soccer thing, I think um, we always get a good response because even if people aren't necessarily into soccer, um, they always just think that it's cool. Like, wow, some soccer folks are reaching out to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And want what I do to live in their world. So yeah,
No, that's cool. That's real cool.
hopefully it came out, and we have the color poster. As people will see, there's a color version of it, and his art is very colorful. So that's actually one of the big things that stuck out.
Yeah, absolutely. And those of you out there, you'll see the full color poster. We're going to be releasing that pretty soon, probably in the next month or so, once we get everything ready to do it in different sets of prints. He has different colors. He has a full color. He has some that are, three different colors. And any one of those, you can see the message and you kind of see his vision behind it clear as well. So it's definitely great to have George, and we thank him for being a part of it. So I get back to the theme of the concept and the theme and the ideals
Mhm.
behind it. United, equality, stop racism, inclusion, equal pay. Those are very strong. And someone would probably sit there and say, okay, well, in 1 year you're not going to change all of that. So
Mhm.
I obviously say that doesn't stop us from trying, but what
Yeah.
do you think would be a tangible result? What do you think that we can look back on in 2020, at the end of 2021? Hopefully we're out of this pandemic by then, but we can look back together in person and say, we made progress in this area. What is a tangible result that you think can be met in 2021?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that in looking at this in a t-shirt, and this was something that I kind of thought would be interesting to take on as a concept, which was like, your question of what can we do. I wanted to take a step back and say like, what how do we need to reformulate the way that we operate currently in order to be able to be unified to move together and create this change.
Hmm.
And you can only do so much with a t-shirt. So in looking at what was possible, as I was saying, I felt like there was a big um, potentially missed opportunity for players to come out, make a statement, and people pretend like they were listening, but people were maybe just looking, to see how they were going to do it and what they were going to say, and were they going to be kneeling, and what was the words, and like what are we going to do? So, uh, even before looking at like what is possible, I just felt like we have so many smart, dope, great black players on the U.S. national team. Um, I thought that how can we run with who these guys are currently,
Hmm.
and what are the messages that they are looking to promote, and how can we help them achieve it? Um, and I believe that to be the function of a supporters group, right? Which is to support the players, right? Support the team,
Hmm.
support the things that the team and the players are trying to achieve. So before even like storming out into society and thinking about the changes, I felt like trying to make that connection stronger was um, what what I might help achieve, right? Um, what's possible? I mean, I can tell you right now that I think a lot of funding, I think a lot of change is already happening. Um, it's not where it needs to be. It doesn't mean that anyone should rest on their laurels, but I think this social movement is going to have created a lot of investment, um, a lot of additional thought and perspective into the way corporations are operating, the way teams are operating, the way the U.S. national team is operating. And so I think these things are going to take time, but I personally am part of a lot of behind closed doors meetings where really awesome things are starting to be worked on and planned and actually funded. You know what I mean? So and I think that to a certain degree, some of the of our ability to pretend like there weren't these issues is just kind of like gone by the wayside, and now people show up and they're like, we know it's an issue, we're ready to go, what do we need to do?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that there's a lot of possibilities, and I think the great thing is, of all the change that we can and are going to create, are all going to be things that are going to make this country stronger, to make U.S. soccer stronger, to create more fans, to create more awareness. And so um, I think that we don't have to necessarily just think of creating change as like, you know, in a soup kitchen and handing out food. You know what I mean?
Right.
Although that needs to happen as well because people are hungry. But you know, I think like as we diversify the sport, as we tell more Black stories, um, you know, everybody's going to win. Everybody's going to gain that. You know what I mean? I always hear people say like, what if we had the LeBron James like playing soccer? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so my answer to that is like, well, we got to convince the future LeBron Jameses of the world that they should play soccer. So why should they? You know,
Right.
and let's create an environment that doesn't just create a pipeline for them, but let's create an environment that is calling them. Let's create an environment that is welcoming, that is these type of things. So um, that's what I think is possible.
Yeah. And honestly, to that end, like, you mentioned the age old question of what would happen if LeBron James or Ndamukong Suh or Tim Duncan would play soccer instead of their respective sports. I'm like, what's, why can't we just create more opportunities for more Weston McKennies and more Tyler Adams, because they're out there too,
For sure.
and,
Yeah.
LeBron James is 6'8" and 270. If you've met
Yeah.
a 6'8", 270 soccer player, I want to meet him because I ain't met him
Yeah.
yet. Right. So like
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
those sort of things where we get everybody to the table. And you mentioned this and earlier when you were talking about getting all of these different entities and organizations and coalitions to kind of unify their message and get on the same page. I mean, we even last summer were on a group with involving people from around the world where we're trying to get on the same page and kind of make sure that when we speak, our message is clear. And I think having all those entities at the same table, to even some that shouldn't be at the table but need to, right? They need to
For
be
sure.
present to understand what's going on and know that their role in fixing it and their role in bringing this change. So I'm really glad that you've been doing that. And I'm glad that you are speaking about that and constantly keeping that message unified as we move forward, because it's going to be very important.
For sure. And I think the onus is on the soccer community because I think we think too much like, how are we going to get more Black people to play the sport? And I think for me, I think to myself, I want young Black kids to do whatever they want. If they
Hmm.
want to be, if they want to play video games, if they want to be doctors, if they want to be ballerinas, musicians, I'm not going to necessarily come to any young kids and say, this is what you should be doing, right? So the onus is on us as the soccer community to convince, young Black kids that they should play soccer if we want to win. And if that's the reason why we're asking, right? Um, so I think like just thinking about what is in it for Black people, right? And what are the circumstances? What are the environments? How are we treated by fans? What's the messaging from the media and like these type of things? So that when we do convince them to go play, we're doing it for more than just saying, hey, because we're trying to win, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think like I read online, it's very easy to get negative, to feel negative about like where things are at. But I came into this at such a time where there was at least an awareness of what some of the problems are in the industry, and that's a good starting point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you entered at the right time. It was needed then. It's needed more than ever now, and we will definitely need your voice moving forward. Before we get out of here, I do want to thank you. Just tell the people where they can reach you, how they can get involved with Black Arrow outside of American Outlaws or outside of whatever they're doing. How can they get involved with Black Arrow FC?
yeah, so I would say the easiest way is to follow us on Instagram or Twitter. Both is at Black Arrow FC. If you just put that in the search, follow us, and and then just reach out. We get a lot of people that just might hear me on the podcast and reach out and say, hey, I love what you're doing. And through those channels, you can find out about projects and events that we have going on. And, the best way to support is to just tell more people about it.
Absolutely. And for everyone out there, first of all, Aaron, thanks so much. Again, we've been trying to do this for a long time. I'm glad we were able to finally do this. So I appreciate
Pleasure,
you
man.
joining me. And for
All
everyone
right.
out there, I want to thank you for tuning in for this special interview and for just rocking with us. I mean, 2021
My
was
pleasure.
a terrible year, but 2021 for Aaron and for all of us is going to be better. It's going to be the strongest year. It's going to be our most important year. That means that this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning. So may this shirt, as I
Absolutely.
hold this up again, may it be a reminder for all of us, for all the ideals that we stand for and the call to action that we have accepted. The road to change is going to be windy. It will not be paved, but it is important to stay on that path, and we need all of us to stay on that path with us. So we're going to continue to bring you this story throughout the year, the story of this shirt, the ideals that it represents, what we represent. Throughout this month, Black History Month and beyond, we're going to educate and make sure that AO is at the forefront of bringing the change that we seek, whether it's on the field, in the stands, and in our respective communities. So let's push each other to be a part of that change. So for all of us here at AO and for Aaron Dolores and the entire Black Arrow FC community, I'm Donald Wine. Take care.